around. A cloudier start across southwest Scotland with some showers drifting in here, and the same goes for the east of Northern Ireland. In fact, it could be misty and foggy almost anywhere first thing, with some showers close to the south coast and into westernmost parts of Wales. But overall, certainly for central and eastern England, much drier than today. In the west, where we see these showers coming into Devon, Cornwall, western side of Wales, the east coast of Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. Could be heavy, could even turn into thunderstorms. 1 or 2 showers possible elsewhere, but equally many places will be dry and bright with a bit of sunshine if the fog clears. Now, if the fog sticks, which it can do at this time of year, temperatures will really struggle, but generally we're looking at 6 to 9 degrees, so about average for the time of year. Into Saturday, and well, again, it's a bit of a messy one. Some mist and low clouds sticking in places. A few showers across northern England and Scotland, some around western coast, but many areas I suspect will be dry on Saturday. It should brighten up a little in some spots, and temperatures again about 5 to 9 Celsius. Bye for now.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date. An incredible £85,000 in tax-free cash could be yours. Cash to make 2026 the year of yes. That's yes to holidays, yes to treats, yes to making all of those dreams come true this year. Just make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £85,000 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Bold.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What we're going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dawdney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
Britain is broken. Britain needs reform. And reform needs you.
Robert Jenrick defects to reform after Kemi Badenoch sacked him from the shadow cabinet in the Tory party after papers were found of Mr Jenrick drafting a defection speech. Nigel Farage thanked Mrs Badenoch for encouraging Mr Jenrick into his fold. But is this a knee-jerk reaction from Robert Jenrick, or is it the big-name legitimisation reform needed? And have joined at all. But you never know until the deal is signed and the hand is shaken. Nigel Farage also reveals a reform defection from Labour is imminent. So who, if anyone, could be the next to join his party? And is the turquoise tidal wave about to hit Labour as well?
Been notified and pretty strongly, but we'll find out what that all means. But we've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping.
Does Donald Trump have a plan on Iran, or is he making a dangerous gamble? The President of the United States hasn't ruled out military action and today claimed protest killings have stopped, despite reports of thousands dead. Also, new figures from the Department of Health and Social Care show abortions in the UK hit a record of nearly 300,000 in 2023, an increase of nearly 50% over the previous decade. Now concerns are growing that safeguards have been weakened and lives are at risk. Is it time to rethink the law on the right to life? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most phlogistically prognosticating panel, the journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Buttonworth and the US journalist and commentator Hadley Gamble. Also...
Original gangster OG. Original gangster OG. Fix up Breton, I'll fix up Breton for the reggae.
I'll also be revealing the results of the Rees-Mogg versus Farage dance-off. As ever, let me know what you think. Mailmog at GBNews.com. And now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Jacob, thank you very much. The top stories this evening. Robert Jenrick has joined Reform UK after being sacked by the Conservatives. Speaking after being introduced by Nigel Farage at a press conference today, Robert Jenrick says he first reached out to Nigel Farage in September, but didn't know then that he was going to defect. The former Justice Secretary was sacked after his resignation speech was allegedly left printed out and hanging around. Jenrick says he won't call a by-election in his Newark constituency, while Mr Farage says he will not accept defectors after the elections in May. The Reform UK leader earlier said he'd been in talks with Mr Jenrick, though he denies a deal was imminent.
If you look just this morning at Con Home, which is a big online page for Conservative supporters, is by far the most popular member of the Conservative Party. Him coming to us today is in many ways the beginning of the centre-right now beginning to form around the Reform Party. Well, they timed it. So I went live at 11 o'clock in Scotland to announce our Scottish leader, Malcolm Offord, and my press officer, Ed, ran up with a telephone with the announcement that had just happened, and I had to sort of put on a poker face and pretend I didn't know.
Kemi Badenoch says she's delighted to announce Nick Timothy as the new Shadow Justice Secretary. She told broadcasters she did the right thing by sacking the Tory frontbencher Robert Jenrick, adding it was something that she'd had to do, as even people in Reform told her he was about to defect. Labour says the row exposes a party in freefall, with Sir Keir Starmer accusing the Conservatives of losing control of their own MPs as they bleed support to Reform.
The last straw and what pushed me to make this decision was seeing that Robert had plans not just to leave, but to actually hurt the people that he'd been working with. The public are tired of all of this psychodrama, all of this personal ambition, everyone trying to, harm the other person. I'm sick of it, and I'm just done. And I asked him to leave. We don't want people like that in our party.
Elsewhere, the UK Foreign Office has said it's carefully considering a response to Russia after expelling a British diplomat. Moscow accused the unidentified man of being an intelligence agent working undercover at the embassy in Russia's capital. The unnamed official has been given 2 weeks to leave the country, with the Kremlin warning it'll respond decisively if Britain escalates the situation. The Foreign Secretary spoke this afternoon.
We've seen this repeated pattern from Russia. It's not the first time that they have done this. They make malign and unfounded allegations against our staff, and we consider our response. But it's because we know about the hostility that Russia continually shows. That's why we take so seriously things like the threat from the Russian Northern Fleet. It's why I'm here in Norway as part of our cooperation in tackling the Russian threats.
And finally, the Princess of Wales hosted the 2025 World Champion England women's rugby team at Windsor Castle this afternoon. She met with Rugby Football Union officials and staff, as well as the 32 women's squad. In her role as patron of the Rugby Football Union, Princess Catherine was delighted to welcome the team to mark their achievement, which saw them secure a 33-13 win over Canada in September. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more news from me in an hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. And what a day it's been for those of us on the right of the British political spectrum. The first thing that happens, a decisive intervention by Kemi Badenoch. She sacks her Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick. He's out. A few hours later, he says that he has joined Reform, which is why she fired him in the first place. And when he went, this is what he said about the Conservative Party, that he'd only just left and of which he'd been a member since he was a 16-year-old.
Betraying its principles, the Conservative Party betrayed its voters, its members, and the men and women who elect me in Newark and Nottinghamshire. And let's be very clear with ourselves. This didn't just happen. It wasn't bad luck. It's because over time, most of the party in Westminster lost its way.
So that was his analysis of why he had to go, though he'd recently been saying that having stood recently for the leadership of the party, he wasn't going to give up on it so easily. When the news broke, I thought that Kemi Badenoch was taking a risk because she was accusing Robert of something which, if the evidence wasn't produced, could have rebounded on her. But she was also being very proactive, terrible word, in getting something done and showing strong leadership, showing that she had mettle and backbone and that she was taking command of a situation before others took it out of her hands. Robert, of course, by then joining Reform later in the day, meant that no further evidence was needed. If he was about to go, he'd now gone. So she no longer needed to prove that what she was saying was true, that the story was true. She then had to look at the position where the Conservatives have lost a very important figure in the party. We lost Nadeem Zahawi earlier in the week, who has been a Chancellor of the Exchequer and party chairman, but was no longer a Member of Parliament. Robert Jenrick, runner-up in the leadership contest, a Member of Parliament, former holder of high office, and a very energetic campaigner. Somebody you see on your TV screens regularly, someone who's up and down the country speaking at events, getting a message across. So Reform is now in a much stronger position than it was a week ago, that instead of looking like a one-man band, in spite of the able people around Nigel, it looked as if it was Nigel and little more than that. It now has some big hitters from the Conservative Party. This is not without its downside. There are people who think that the Tories are terrible old has-beens, dead wood, and that they want a new Reform that doesn't become a sort of nursing home for former Tories. There is that risk. But on the other hand, you now look at Reform and think, well, Nigel Farage could put together a cabinet of 20 or so people who have had serious political careers, who understand how the country is run. So it is a big positive, in my view, for Reform. Kemi, on the other hand, has suffered a loss. But my goodness, she's made the best of a difficult circumstance. It's never good for a party when people are defecting, but by grasping the initiative first thing in the morning, by interrupting Nigel Farage's press conference, which was a clever bit of political theatre, it put Nigel momentarily on the back foot, she managed to minimise the damage that was being done. I'm not saying there's no damage, but think how much worse it would have been had Robert been able to do it on his own timescale, at a time and place of Nigel Farage's own choosing. It would have been a much more damaging news day for the Conservative Party under those circumstances. She also got across the view that Robert had behaved badly, that whilst within the tent, he'd been plotting to tear down the tent, and that's not a particularly good look. So Reform comes out of it well. The Conservatives limit the damage, but they are certainly damaged. And then you have the situation of what happens next. Because I've been going on for ages about how the right needs to unite. We need to go into a general election with one party of the right, not with two parties. If we go with two parties in a first-past-the-post system, we both lose. And then you have Zach Polanski in office, and then you have mad policies that make us cold and poor, are utterly destructive. You continue with some Labour ministers, and you see how successful they are currently. So it's really important that the right unites. Robert made it very clear in his statement and answering questions that he didn't want to do this. But I would say that is what people argue just at the point at which they have joined a new party. Nobody talks about deals until the deal is done. It's exactly the same reason that Robert said he was going to remain a Conservative, because he couldn't admit he was going to go until he went. So I think a deal does remain possible, and it's in the national interest. Indeed, I'd say further than that, it's the duty of those on the right to come together. And if that means some of the left of the Conservative Party, of whom Robert was particularly critical, are uncomfortable and go off to join the Lib Dems, that's fine, actually. We need a Conservative alliance that is genuinely Conservative. Because I'm sorry to confess that a lot of Robert's analysis of what had gone wrong with the Conservative Party in government was actually true. There were some successes as well. It's not to deny those, with education, with Brexit, with dealing with the global financial crisis. But, migration was out of control. Taxation ended up the highest it has done in decades. And we didn't seem to be doing Conservative things. We allowed foreign courts to overrule us. So his critique was not inaccurate, but the reason for it is some people who have been in the party who aren't very Conservative. So actually, I am today, as always when I'm on GB News speaking to my wonderful viewers, full of beans about the future of conservatism, even if it hasn't been the best ever day for the Conservative Party. Let me know what you want, mailmog@gbnews.com, because I'm now joined by the Deputy Leader of Durham County Council Reform's one and only Darren Grimes. Mr Grimes, thank you for joining me. Is there rejoicing in Durham at the one sinner who repenteth in the form of Robert Jenrick and has come over to reform?
I think there's rejoicing, Jacob, that finally it looks as if the right's going to be all right, in that actually everything that you've set out there, it looks to me like a decisive decision has been made. That, you were once referred, Jacob, as the honourable member of the 18th century, but I think actually the country is catching up with the fact that it's the Conservative Party that belongs in the 18th century as a museum relic. I think actually the only thing, you called them deadwood or suggested they may well be deadwood. I would argue that actually, Jacob, deadwood had some uses to it, whereas a shadow cabinet made up of a collection of people who, as Robert set out today, very eloquently, by the way, a collection of border vandals like Priti Patel, who, of course, spent those years torching the country's trust, the trust that you and I told millions of Conservative voters for the very first time, many of them, Jacob. I can remember you saying that 14 million people put their faith in the Conservative Party, only to find out that they governed like Liberal Democrats. Well, I'm afraid to say that that betrayal hasn't been forgotten, it won't be forgotten, and that actually Robert Jenrick has just confirmed what everyone outside the Westminster bubble already knows, that Britain is broken, Darren, the Tories broke it, and it's your party line to ban people from saying that, Jacob.
But Robert Jenrick was an important part of the last Tory government. He resigned very late on in the process. He was a strong Cameroon to start with. Robert was much closer to all of these decisions than, for instance, I was.
But since then, I would argue that actually what he has done and said with government, with outside of government as well. He resigned, of course, during the Rwanda controversy. But actually now, since leaving government, what he has said and done has moved the conversation in a reform direction, dare I say, Jacob. So actually, I think what he's managed to do is to drag the national conversation to say that this is where we are on the right, this is where we need to be to save our country. And ultimately, that's the benefit benefit of bringing in people like him who have, I admit, been on a journey, but who hasn't? You know, if you ask your average GB News viewer, they've been on a journey too, Jacob.
Darren, I just want to ask you one final question. You've been very critical of the Tory party, you've been very critical of Tory figures. Does it worry you that Reform seems now to be becoming the twilight home for superannuated Tories who are worried about their seats and worried about their political careers?
Well, I don't believe he's superannuated. I mean, look at the Conservative home polling, Jacob. You know, he was the top cheese, the Conservative home, the rump of the Conservative caucus.
Yeah, but not just Robert, Nadeem and all the others you've been taking in. Do you want to continue with lots of old Tories coming in?
I would say that actually the likes of the Danny Krugers of this world, the James Orrs of this world, the ones setting the agenda, the Zia Yousafs of this world, the Leila Cunninghams, they're the ones that are leading the charge. We're doing all very good stuff here in Durham too. I think that actually the agenda is being set in a direction that excites me for the first time in many, many years. And that's why Nigel has said, you cannot defect after May the 7th, Jacob. He set a line for the Conservative Party and for other defectors. The door will be shut. So I think actually that's setting quite a clear marker.
All right, thank you very much. I'm joined now by the former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh. Trevor, thank you very much for joining me. What I'd really like to pick your brains on is whether you've seen anything like this before, like today's extraordinary news events unfolding.
I don't think anyone's seen anything like this before, to be honest, Jacob. I think that one of the problems for Reform is that it's just received into its ranks two people who are so nakedly ambitious they might put people off politics altogether. Where is the integrity of a man who has been the archetypal shapeshifter, both physically and politically, for the whole of his political career? He was a Cameroon pro-Europe, anti-Brexit, and defiantly so, until he suddenly changed his mind and saw that that wasn't the direction that Tory voters were going. So he suddenly became a leaver. And that applies to just about everything that Robert Jenrick has stood for in the whole of his political career. And I do think, actually, that he may have mistimed the defection that he's just carried out, because it's come at the very moment that it seems to me, at any rate, that Kemi Badenoch is beginning to get traction in the opinion polls and in the views of her own party. She is beginning to do rather well in the House of Commons in Prime Minister's Question Time, where she bests on almost every occasion the pathetic attempts of Keir Starmer to make jokes at her expense. And I think that people are beginning to look, lots of people are beginning to look at Kemi Badenoch as someone they might actually turn to. It remains to be seen, but I think that this Robert Jenrick may have made a mistake in his timing. He should have gone sooner, or he should have gone later.
Do you think this may be part of the motive, that actually he doesn't want or didn't want Kemi Badenoch to do particularly well because it made it increasingly unlikely that he was going to be leader of the Conservative Party, or am I being unkindly cynical?
I don't think Robert Jenrick was ever going to be the leader of the Conservative Party, and despite the fact that Con Home is rating him at 60%, I think people can see that this is a man who is so nakedly ambitious that he is prepared to adopt any principle for the time being. And one of the points I thought that Kemi made very succinctly was that he is no longer her problem, he's Nigel Farage's problem. And it's worth remembering that only a few months ago, Nigel himself said that Robert Jenrick is a fraud. I've always said he's a fraud, and I think that that will come home to roost.
And do you think that Reform is taking a big risk in taking not just Robert, but also Nadeem Zahawi? It begins to look as if it's much the same as the rest of politics, that it's becoming part of the uni party.
Yes, I think that opportunism is a natural thing with politics, to be absolutely honest. But I think with these two particular specimens of defectors, you have major question mark over the integrity of both men. And I think that their record in office doesn't bear close scrutiny. If you want someone who is consistent, believes in principles which they follow through thick and thin, rather than leaping about and changing their position every time the opportunity arises. And I think that Robert Jenrick perhaps more so than almost any other politician in modern politics.
All right. Trevor, as always, it's a pleasure to listen to you, and thank you for joining me. In a moment.
Until the deal is signed and the hand is shaken.
Nigel Farage also reveals a reform defection from Labour is imminent. So who could, if anyone, will it be? The next to join reform, and is the turquoise tidal wave about to hit the socialists as well?
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
Practice Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
That you finally got your MBE. Well done, sir.
Absolutely, and thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I'm so honoured, to get it. I could not believe it when I got the letter saying, they were going to honour me with it. I can't wait to go and collect it now.
And Paul, no doubt when you go and meet His Majesty, you might have some kind of funny quip to say to him. What are you going to say? To me, to Your Majesty?
Well, I might say, not from you to me, hopefully. It depends who it is, doesn't it, as well? I might be stum. Sometimes I can't say things much, but who knows? I mean, I'm just really looking forward to collecting it. It's I feel so honoured.
And Paul, of course, as well as services to comedy, which this wasn't for, though heaven knows it perhaps should have been, this was for services, your recognition of your fundraising for Marie Curie for cancer, of course, because your brother Barry sadly passed away of bone cancer. And since that time, you kind of made it one of your missions to raise awareness, and that is why the King has given you the nod. Tell us about your charity work.
Well, both Barry and I were both ambassadors for Marie Curie for about 6-7 years before Barry passed away. It was just such a fabulous thing. You know so many people that have been looked after by Marie Curie in the later age. That's obviously because of the age we are, getting to that sort of age. Lots of our friends and family are passing away. And the Marie Curie, they just everything. When my father-in-law passed away, he was on what you say his deathbed. And a Marie Curie nurse sat up with my wife all night long. She didn't have to, but they sat there for like 7 or 8 hours with her. It was, they're just wonderful people. They do a lot more than people realise they do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and we were talking about Jenric's defection, and the mailmogs have come in. Andy says, Labour is the political Titanic with Keir Starmer at the helm, and it's sinking fast, while the Conservatives are the iceberg, cold as ice and drifting aimlessly. Oh dear. Elizabeth said, idiotically hubristic of Farage to set a deadline for defection. Defection takes place all through life and cannot be constrained like that. Emma says, I think Robert's speech this afternoon was the best thing I've heard. He opened a big can of worms. Well, certainly a can of worms has been opened. It's very interesting to see what the effects of this might be, what the effects on polling could possibly be, who will be up, who will be down, and what's been happening in the last few months, because you may have noticed Kemi Badenoch's been going up, and reform's possibly slightly flatlined, possibly even gone down a little. Anyway, I'm delighted to be joined by the pollster James Johnson, who will be able to tell me all about this, unravel it, and explain what is good and what is bad. James, thank you for coming in. Kemi's actually been doing pretty well, and I thought her robust performance today is likely to help her with a lot of Conservative-minded voters.
I don't think I agree, Jacob, and let me tell you why. She has done better in the last few months. Her approval ratings have gone up, but it hasn't necessarily been met with an increase, in some polls at least, in the voting intention. And I think this morning it did show Kemi Badenoch to be strong. I think the parliamentary party and the Conservatives will be very pro what happened. But in the country as a whole, I don't think they're going to remember the fact that Kemi Badenoch came out this morning and did a strong Twitter video. I think what they're going to remember is that this was the moment when Reform actually got Robert Jenrick on side and became a bit more palatable to those Conservatives. Now, Robert Jenrick is popular with Tory members. I'm sure a bit of that will come off today because of loyalty of the Conservative flock. But fundamentally, he speaks for a kind of conservatism that a lot of Conservative voters who've been toying with the idea of reform are now going to feel is part of Farage's party.
So you'd be saying that Robert going makes Reform in a way respectable, turns it from being a one-man band to, and possibly with some extreme elements to it, to being a party very firmly in the mainstream British politics with more people in it who could form a government. Do you think people think it through like that?
I think not necessarily. I don't think people are sat there today and going, Rob Jenrick has gone to Reform, therefore I will vote Reform. But I think that over the coming weeks and months, as they see more of that and they see more of him in Reform, they will feel more comforted. The big group that Reform needs to win to get from sort of 28%, where they are in the polls at the moment, to 35 or 40% are these Conservative pensioners who are in the shires, who are quite affluent, and they don't quite trust Farage with the economy or with their pension at the moment. But if they look and they see Farage has got a bit more of a team, he's got some respectable Tories around him who he quite likes, I think this is a good thing. Some people in Reform are worried about the party becoming too Conservative. Conservative voters are the ones they need to win. We've done some polling at JL Partners. Only 5% of current Labour voters say they consider voting Reform, whereas 20% of current Conservative voters say they would consider Reform. So there are more Tories for Reform to cannibalise.
So the fear that gets expressed and comes in on the mailmogs and so on from some Reform supporters that they just don't want all these Tories coming in because they think they tarnish the brand. You think that's a mistake and that the brand is enhanced by having former Tories of high calibre coming in?
Yeah, look, Reform's brand power is always going to come from Nigel Farage. He is the number one sort of, person that they want and person that they like. But I think that in a world where you need to win win Conservative voters if you're Reform, this is only good news to have more Conservatives. Now, you don't want to completely dilute the brand. There are some Conservatives that Reform won't want. And, of course, there will be ideologically people on the ideological centre or left of the Conservative Party that Reform wouldn't want. But fundamentally, I think that is a better place to be going.
Do voters worry about whether politicians are opportunistic, or do they just assume that politicians are always opportunistic and never done make a difference?
I think they assume it. And this is why I don't think this is going to be that bad for Rob Jenrick. People know that politicians defect for reasons that are more complex than merely principles. And I think, therefore, they will cut him quite a bit of slack on that. And, like I say, some are celebrating this for Kemi Badenoch today. I suspect this might be the moment where another nail has gone in the Conservative Party coffin. Reform has already eclipsed them in the polls, and I can only see this going in one direction as they continue to grow and continue to eat those voters up.
Because the polls seem to have stalled a bit. There was one poll that it may have been a rogue, had Reform, I think, down as low as 24%, and certainly they weren't getting up anymore. Is this very important in re-energising Reform after it had seemed to get into doldrums?
I think that's probably right. I think it's slightly been overstated. I think they have flatlined. I'm not sure they're quite going down yet, certainly not in our polling. But yes, they have reached a point. They need to grow more, and it's those Tory pensioners I mentioned where they have the biggest chance of growing. There is something else interesting going on, though. If you remember back to those local elections, after those local election wins for Reform, Reform's vote share went up. Now, interestingly, since it's trended down, we've seen that also be matched by an increase in people not knowing who Reform are. So I think some people, remember, most people out in the country are not engaged in the day-to-day. If Reform win the local elections this year again, you could see that shoot back up again as people start to realise that they are a viable party.
So partly publicity for Reform reminds people that Reform is an option, and therefore a day like today is axiomatically good for Reform because it's in everybody's minds and people are watching political shows all day long.
Absolutely. And when you get into an election campaign, you want people like Rob Jenrick on your side if you're Reform.
Because he's a very effective campaigner. What about issues? Reform's done very well because immigration has been at the forefront of people's minds. Net migration seems to be coming under control, actually, thanks to some reforms that Robert Jenrick was involved with whilst he was still supporting Rishi Sunak. If that becomes less of an issue, What does reform go on to next? What are the issues people associate with reform?
So certainly immigration is a big one. Remember that even if net migration goes down, immigration is still something that people are worried about because it's already impacted their communities. It's still there. It doesn't, people aren't, these numbers are still going up. They're just going up more slowly. They are also worried about things like the economy, the cost of living, the NHS. And Reform aren't currently doing so well on those issues. So they need to also make progress on those. I think you see that in some of the things that Nigel Farage has been talking about over the last few months. Crime is a good one, which voters care about, which Reform are seen as being strong on. But it's without a doubt that if Reform wants to be a truly national party, they need to focus on some of these issues. And I will say one thing that is good for the Conservatives today is the appointment of Nick Timothy as the Shadow Justice Secretary, who is
capable.
He's a very capable MP. He's very powerful. He's almost got this West Midlands police chief sacked for the terrible events over the Maccabi Tel Aviv game. And he is somebody who is a very good sort of public performer for the Conservatives that they will want to keep an eye on.
One final thought, because we're probably out of time. Kemi said that Robert was now Nigel's problem. Is there a fear that Nigel may have offered 4 people the Chancellorship of the Exchequer, Richard Tice, Zahir Youssef, Nadeem Zahawi and now Robert Jenrick, and that actually these gains do present problems as well?
I think they do present problems, and this is the journey that Reform is on. They're going from a one-man band to a team to put in front of the country. And if they're all going to be best mates in 3 years' time, well, I'd wager you that they probably won't.
Well, defections from Reform next. Anyway, James, thank you very much indeed. What are we going to have next? This is what's coming. Donald Trump has a plan on Iran, or does he not? Is he making a dangerous gamble? The President of the United States hasn't ruled out military action and today claimed protest killings have stopped, despite reports of thousands dead.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Through the rest of the week and into the weekend, there's some pretty unsettled weather spreading its way eastwards across the Mediterranean. As we go through tomorrow, there'll be rain, even some hill snow pushing through Portugal and Spain, also some heavy bursts of rain across southern France. All of that is going to make its way eastwards, and so although there's some dry, at times bright weather around at the moment, as we go into the weekend, we're in for some heavy thundery rain and also some strong gusty winds leading to rough seas.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Things turning a bit drier over eastern England tonight, and that will allow things to turn perhaps a bit foggy through the night, and as things turn chilly, we may see some icy patches first thing tomorrow. But it's been a very wet day for some today. This area of low pressure crossing through England has been bringing some heavy and persistent rain. Still a lot of spray and surface water on the roads out there this evening, but all tending to pull away out into the North Sea by soon after midnight. Showers will follow into Wales and southern parts of England, the east of Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland, but otherwise turning dry. Quite a cold night across the north especially, some pockets of frost likely, certainly where there's snow lying on the ground across Scotland. Temperatures may well get down to -5 to maybe as low as -8 Celsius. So a cold frosty start across northern Scotland. Should be some sunshine. Could also be some mist and fog around. A cloudier start across southwest Scotland with some showers drifting in here, and same goes for the east of Northern Ireland. In fact, it could be misty and foggy almost anywhere first thing, with some showers close to the south coast and into westernmost parts of Wales. But overall, certainly for central and eastern England, much drier than today. In the west, where we see these showers coming into Devon, Cornwall, western side of Wales, the east coast of Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. Could be heavy, could even turn into thunderstorms. 1 or 2 showers possible elsewhere, but equally many places will be dry and bright with a bit of sunshine if the fog clears. Now, if the fog sticks, which it can do at this time of year, temperatures will really struggle, but generally we're looking at 6 to 9 degrees, so about average for the time of year. Into Saturday, and well, again, it's a bit of a messy one. Some mist and low clouds sticking in places. A few showers across northern England and Scotland, some around western coast, but many areas I suspect will be dry on Saturday. It should brighten up a little in some spots, and temperatures again about 5 to 9 Celsius. Bye for now.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too.
From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Does Donald Trump have a plan when it comes to the situation in Iran? The President of the United States has not written off military intervention in Iran as opposition to the regime continues. Today, Mr. Trump said the killing of protesters has stopped, despite 2,400 reportedly being killed so far, and his earlier threats of very strong action against Iran if it continued.
I'm told that the killing in Iran is stopping, and it's stopped, and it's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it. I'm sure if it happens, we'll all be very upset.
Also, why is the political left so concerned with Gaza and Palestinians, yet unconcerned with Iranians living under a deeply oppressive regime? Well, my panel's with me, Hadley Gamble and Benjamin Butterworth. Benjamin, let me ask you first about the left, because the left don't seem too fussed about Iran. They're not taking the streets and waving flags in support of the Iranian opposition.
Well, I think it's the hard left rather than the mainstream left. The kind of people in the Labour Party in Parliament, I don't think take that view. But I think there is a naivety or something quite revealing about this. There is a basic attitude of if it's not West, then it's best. They sort of fetishise this version of Islam in a way that I think is quite dangerous. And the problem is that it is the very people they claim to be helping that they're not. You know, I was in Israel during the 12-day war with Iran last June, and it is clear that Iran is an incredible threat to the region. And so I think there's a certain irony that when some of these people talk about not wanting kings in Donald Trump, and they're right with that, I think he does behave like a king, they miss the people like the Ayatollah or Maduro, who are clearly far more of a threat. But I think it's something on the hard left and not on the centre left. I don't think it's a big problem in the Parliamentary Labour Party.
All right, well, that leads neatly on to Trump, What is he doing? That he was very successful with the 12-day war. It seemed to have knocked out Iran's nuclear facilities. Now he's sort of slightly blamed hot and cold. Is this gamesmanship? Does he have a plan? Or is it just whatever he thinks of?
What's fascinating is, you know, if you take a step back and look at the history in this, the first administration, he walked right up to the edge of going to war with Iran, and then he stepped back at the last second. And it seems as if he's done this again. But what's interesting is the Gulf Arab countries, they've been doing shuttle diplomacy like you would not believe, trying to make sure that nothing further happens. Why? Because they don't need any more problems in this region. And we're talking about oil prices, right? We remember back when Abqaiq was attacked, it knocked global oil production off, 5% of global oil production off in one day, right? So they don't want this to happen. They've been very, very careful to be conciliatory with Iran for the last couple of years as a result of just frankly not trusting the Americans to help them.
But a lot of the Arab states are very suspicious of Iran, and Saudi Arabia has been in a proxy war with Iran for a very long time. So they don't have much love for the regime.
They have no love for the regime, but this is their neighborhood, and they're stuck with it. And what do they understand? The United States is not going to have their back. That's something that they've understood for a few years now. They can go and pledge, billions of dollars to President Trump and the United States in terms of investments. They can say every day till they're blue in the face that they love the United States and that they're partners and friends and even allies. But at the end of the day, they understand that the United States under Donald Trump has a different agenda, and it doesn't necessarily include coming to save them.
So what then happens to Iran? These protests end up being in vain. Is that really what you're saying? Because nobody's going to go in and help them, and the regime is brutal enough just to kill people.
At the end of the day, the Iranians are going to have to decide at some point that this regime does not work for them. And there is no succession plan for the Ayatollah. So if you're looking at this from the American perspective, you can just wind down the clock. When you look at how big of a threat they are to the region today as a result of Israel's direction when it comes to Hezbollah, when it comes to Hamas, when it comes to the fact that al-Shara has taken Syria with a lot of Saudi help and money and a lot of American help and money. They're much, much more depleted in terms of their strength, in terms of causing trouble in the region. We're talking about as much as 40%. So when we think about them as a threat, they're much less of a threat than they used to be.
Benjamin, what do you think the British government should do? So far we've had statements saying that the Iranian government should pay attention to human rights, which is a completely pointless thing to say.
Yes.
Is there anything that the UK can do, or is that a rather 19th century view of the world?
Yeah, I think I'll marry Brad Pitt before the Iranian government believes in human rights. But I think there has been a failure of successive UK governments to take seriously the threat of Iran. A couple of years ago, I did an investigation for the newspaper about IRGC terrorism on British soil, and I spoke to 5 British citizens who had had assassination threats here. One of them lived in central London and was nearly kidnapped in Covent Garden by agents of the regime. Another one, a woman called Anna Diamond, was in prison in Iran with Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. And when she came back to London, she would get calls from Revolutionary Guard agents in London saying that we know when you're going in and out of your NHS hospital, and we're going to pose as an NHS nurse, and we're going to spike you, and no one will know you've been murdered. I spoke to a Jewish leader in London who hails from the Middle East, who told me that intelligence services had banned him from walking with his grandchildren in London because there was a realistic threat that he or they could be killed here. Now, this was in the last couple of years. It was under a Conservative government, and still, as all of those people wanted, we didn't proscribe the Revolutionary Guard. And so I think that is what the UK government should be doing. And just to finish, in all those cases, they got intelligence, they got round-the-clock security, but in none of them did authorities pursue Iran or the individuals in this country with a prosecution. That was not the approach. And so I think we have been dangerously weak on our own soil.
And we've been dangerously weak. America is vacillating. This is tragic for the people of Iran, isn't it? Because it means a brutal regime carries on for longer, and we don't get the end of the Ayatollahs running it.
Not in the short term, but in the long term, many would say it's inevitable, because if you just look at the demographics and you look at the economics, because oil prices are lower, they're suffering from sanctions. These people are hurting. And at some point, they're going to recognize that there are other choices. It's just going to be a matter of time.
All right. Well, thank you both very much indeed. In a moment, new figures from the Department of Health and Social Care show abortions in the UK hit a record high of nearly 300,000 in 2023, an increase of nearly 50% over the previous decade. Is it time to rethink the law on the right to life? Also,
original gangster OG, original gangster OG.
Fix up Breton, I'll fix up Breton for the reggae.
Well, stay tuned for the results of the Unite the Right dance competition before the end of the programme. Thank you both.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GBNews, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
New figures from the Department of Health and Social Care show the number of abortions in the UK reached a record high of nearly 300,000 in 2023, an increase of nearly 50% over the previous decade. Pro-abortion activists say access protects women's health, while concerns over weakened safeguards and the scale of abortions have gone far beyond what the law intended. Campaigners are now calling for a national discussion about abortion law, time limits and in-person medical checks. Is it time for fundamental change to the law to protect life, women and dignity? Well, I'm joined now by the abortion rights campaigner, Anne Faroudi. Anne, thank you very much for joining me. These numbers are terrifying, aren't they, that nearly 300,000 lives terminated?
Well, I think the first thing that we should do is take a deep breath about it and look at what the statistics actually mean, because I'm not going to argue that abortion numbers haven't gone up, because I really think that they have, and I think that it says a lot about the society that we live in. But I do think we have to face the fact that probably for the first time since we've collected abortion statistics officially, we have to question the accuracy of these numbers. And the reason why I say that is because now 72% of the abortions that are recorded are ones that involve women taking the abortion medications at home. Now, when those procedures take place, the doctor records the abortion when he or she signs the prescription. So we have absolutely no idea how many of these prescriptions end up being taken by the woman, or indeed not being taken at all. And we know from talking to women that many women feel that the time that they really make up their mind is when they actually have the possibility of taking the tablet. So I think before we get our knickers in a twist about the whole thing, we need to say that this is an incredibly sudden jump, and we should question the integrity of the statistics.
OK, but shouldn't we be worried about the increase anyway, but also of these pills being sent to people without them actually necessarily having that proper conversation with the doctor? The rules about 2 doctors that came in under the David Steele Act, and that the post-COVID change that allowed morning after pills to be sent out in the post.
Well, I think that it's not the case that women are having these procedures without having proper discussions with doctors, because there is a lot of interaction between the woman and the clinics that are sending them on the telephone or online. But what I do think has fundamentally changed, and this might be behind your question, is that I think that society's attitude to these very early abortions has changed, and the fact that the medication can be obtained quite easily, the fact that many women now are choosing to rely on less effective methods of contraception, knowing that they have early abortion as a backup, means that, as you say quite rightly, the whole conversation about abortion has changed among women. It's become that, if you like, there's a much more blurred line now between contraception and early abortion, and we need to talk about it.
It can't be a good thing that contraception is being turned into abortion, that abortion becomes a means of contraception, that it is, apart from anything else, destroying a life that has been created, but also the risks increase, don't they, for women who have abortions as opposed to those who use contraceptive devices?
Well, you see, I think what we need to do in some ways is to separate the values of this and what you think it tells us about values from the clinical safety of it, because I think that the evidence shows very clearly that this is a very safe procedure, and arguably, and the reason why many, many women have stopped using the contraceptive pill, which women of my age find extraordinary.
All right. I'm sorry to cut you off, Anne, but we've got to finish there. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm very grateful. And let us pray for the souls of the holy innocents, those 300,000 children who were killed unborn in 2023. Finally, yesterday, Nigel Farage and I took each other on in a Unite the Right dance-off.
Original gangster OG. Original gangster OG.
Fix up Breton, I'll fix up Breton for the reggae.
Of course, the one of Nigel was AI generated. The one of me, I'll let you make your own minds up about. But we asked you, our viewers, who you thought was the better dancer. And if I won, I would join Reform. And if Nigel won, he must re-enter the Tory fold. Well, it turns out the winner is...
Country first, party dead. Since 16 years old, I wore that crest. Gave my life, gave my best. Friends in Newark, solid and true. Real patriots, not the Westminster Zoo. I rang for Raj back in September. Options open, I remember. But man, cake it for Roy copied. There's some real shit. This is a man doing.
Well, odds fish, the winner turns out to be the one and only Robert Jenrick, whom I congratulate. Anyway, I've just get off to Somerset to put my tracksuit on and do one of my dances when I get home. Up next is the one and only Patrick Christys. Patrick, are you going to be dancing this evening?
I can't believe what I've just watched. But thank you, though, Jacob. Thank you very much. OK, two big stories in town. Robert Jenrick, over to Reform, of course. We're going to have the inside scoop on what really happened there and a tale of the tape. The other big one is that we have been tracking a human trafficker for months, and we have uncovered some footage of him posing with gangs of armed men, and we are posing the question whether or not he is planning on bringing an armed militia over to Britain. So we're going to be talking about all that and much, much more. You are not going to want to miss this show.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Evening, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Things turning a bit drier over eastern England tonight, and that will allow things to turn perhaps a bit foggy through the night, and as things turn chilly, we may see some icy patches first thing tomorrow. But it's been a very wet day for some today. This area of low pressure crossing through England has been bringing some heavy and persistent rain. Still a lot of spray and surface water on the roads out there this evening, but all tending to pull away out into the North Sea by soon after midnight. Showers will follow into Wales and southern parts of England, the east of Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland, but otherwise turning dry. Quite a cold night across the north especially, some pockets of frost likely, certainly where there's snow lying on the ground across Scotland.